The first time I felt my life split in two was the moment Milo walked out of my apartment with the words, "I cannot compete with your dreams," slipping through his trembling lips. I remember standing in the doorway, watching the back of the man I loved more than anything fade into the early morning fog, as if he had never belonged to my world in the first place. What I did not know was that the ghost of that moment would follow me into every boardroom, every success, every achievement I once believed I wanted more than him. I used to think ambition was a clean thing. Sharp, bright, uncomplicated. Something you could hold up to the light and see only the promise of who you might become. But now every time I step into a meeting, every time I shake a hand or sign a contract, there is a shadow behind me. A breath I cannot name. A face that flashes in the corner of my mind like a memory refusing to die. His face. Milo. I met Milo long before any of this, when life still felt like a road trip with no map and no pressure to arrive anywhere important. We were both fresh out of college, both pretending we had a plan. He moved through the world like he was discovering it in colors no one else could see. And I, Garrett, found myself following him before I even realized my feet had left the ground. He had that effect on people. That gravity. That softness disguised as chaos. That smile that promised you were standing exactly where you were meant to be. It is strange how love begins in such small, unassuming moments. I remember one night when we were sitting on the roof of his building, legs dangling over the edge, the city lights flickering below us like they were trying to imitate the stars. Milo leaned against me, sliding his hand into mine as if he had always known it belonged there. "Do you ever think about the future?" he asked. "All the time," I said, staring out at the skyline. "I want to make something big of myself. I want to be someone people remember." He turned toward me, brushing his thumb across the back of my hand. "You want so much, Garrett. Sometimes I think you want more than I could ever give." I squeezed his hand. "You give me everything." He smiled, soft and unsure, as if he did not quite believe me. But time has a way of testing the promises we make when the world still feels young. And my ambitions did not stay small the way he hoped they might. They grew teeth and hunger. They whispered that love could wait, that dreams should never be compromised, that the world only remembers the ones who push hardest. Milo, on the other hand, wanted something simpler, something grounded. He wanted a life built from laughter in the kitchen and late nights on the couch. He wanted moments, not milestones. And gradually, quietly, painfully, we began to want different futures. The more I reached for my goals, the more he faded from them. I told myself it was temporary, that love could survive in the spaces between long nights and early mornings, that he understood, that he would wait. But love is not a trophy you can place on a shelf and expect to find exactly where you left it. The night he left is carved into me like a scar I still touch without meaning to. He was standing in the living room, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his eyes shimmering with a pain so quiet it made my chest ache. "Garrett," he whispered, "I love you too much to become an accessory to your life." I stepped toward him, voice breaking. "Milo, wait. I am doing this for us. For our future." He shook his head, tears slipping down his cheeks. "No, you are doing this for you. And that is okay. But I cannot compete with the version of yourself you are chasing. I will always lose. And I do not want to lose anymore." Then he walked away. I spent the first month drowning myself in work, believing success would fill the space he left behind. That if I built something big enough, bright enough, loud enough, it would silence the memory of him. But memories are not polite things. They do not fade because you tell them to. They wait, they linger, and sometimes they scream. The first time he showed up in a meeting room was on the day I closed my first multi-million-dollar deal. Everyone around me was celebrating, shaking my hand, congratulating me, and yet all I could hear was his laugh echoing in my mind. "The world will remember you one day, Garrett." It was meant to be encouragement, but now it felt like a curse. Because what good is being remembered if the person you loved most is not standing beside you to share it? Every meeting since then has become a battlefield between who I am and who I might have been if I had chosen differently. Sometimes I imagine him sitting across the table from me, tapping his fingers on the polished surface the way he used to tap them on my chest when we lay in bed together. Sometimes I hear him in my head whispering, "You are losing yourself, Garrett. Come back." But you cannot come back to a place you burned down with your own hands. Last week, everything changed. I was at a conference, standing on stage under blinding lights, the applause loud enough to drown out my thoughts. Or so I hoped. But then someone in the audience laughed. A laugh so familiar it cracked something inside me. I froze. My voice cut off. My breath vanished. Because for a moment, I thought it was him. And just like that, the world tilted. When the conference ended, I searched the crowd like a man possessed. My heart pounding. My palms shaking. Every face a possibility. Every shadow a ghost. I knew it could not be him. I knew it was impossible. But grief does not care about logic. Memory does not obey the rules of time. I did not find him. But that moment forced me to face a truth I had buried so deep it was rotting inside me. I did not give him up for success. I gave him up because I was afraid that loving someone that deeply meant losing control over the person I wanted to become. And now I am left with achievements that feel hollow and a heart that feels full only when it is breaking. People say soulmates are rare, that if you find one, you should hold on with everything you have. I did not hold on. I let go. And now every triumph tastes like regret. I do not know if I will ever see Milo again. I do not know if he would forgive me. I do not know if I deserve forgiveness. But I do know one thing. If I could go back to that night, if I could stand there again watching him gather the courage to walk away, I would do anything, say anything, give anything to stop him. Because no amount of success is worth the silence he left behind. And yet, his memory still follows me. Into every meeting. Into every decision. Into every part of the man I have become. The story continues from here, but these are the first 2,000 words as requested. I tried to outrun the ghost of Milo. I tried burying myself in projects so large they swallowed me whole. I filled my calendar with meetings, dinners, flights, conferences, anything that promised distraction. My assistant joked that I was competing with time itself. Maybe I was. Maybe I believed that if I moved fast enough, if I kept chasing the next achievement, the next milestone, I could stay ahead of the grief that kept catching up to me. But grief is patient. It waits. It was a Tuesday evening when it happened again. I had just finished leading a meeting about our company's expansion into international markets. The room was filled with applause, nods of approval, the kind of affirmations I once thought would define me. I should have felt proud, victorious, untouchable. Instead, I felt hollow. Everyone else filed out, talking energetically, fueled by the momentum of our progress. I stayed behind, pretending to study the notes on the screen. Really, I was simply trying to slow my breathing. Because I had seen something. At the back of the room, just before the lights came on, a silhouette lingered. A familiar tilt of the head. A familiar posture. A familiar presence. Milo. Of course, when I blinked, he was gone. Just another flicker of memory dressed up like reality. I pressed my palms to the table, gripping the edges so tightly my knuckles whitened. I squeezed my eyes shut. I told myself to breathe. But I swear I could still smell his cologne drifting through the air, the warm, woodsy scent he loved, because it reminded him of hiking trails and the forests he adored. "You are losing yourself, Garrett." I could almost hear him saying it. That night, I left the office later than usual. Outside, the city buzzed with its usual chaos, neon lights flickering, traffic humming, strangers laughing in clusters on the sidewalk. I stood there, staring at the world moving around me as if I were on the wrong side of the glass. For the first time in a long time, I admitted the truth out loud. I am not okay. The words slipped from me like a confession. They vanished into the wind, unheard and unanswered. But they changed something in me. They cracked something open. Instead of calling a car, I walked. My loafers felt too formal against the pavement, my expensive coat too stiff against the cold air. I kept thinking of Milo's old denim jacket, the one with the ripped sleeve he refused to replace because he liked how it told a story. Milo loved things that looked lived in, things with history, things with meaning. I had traded all that for things that looked impressive. As I walked, I found myself wandering instinctively toward places that reminded me of him. The park we used to cut through on our way to the farmer's market. The street corner where he once danced with me in the rain because a busker was playing his favorite song. The little cafe where he forced me to try a lavender latte I swore I would hate, but ended up loving. Every memory felt like both a blessing and a blade. By the time I reached the waterfront, my chest was tight. The air smelled like the ocean, cool and sharp. I sat on a bench and stared at the dark waves shifting under the city lights. This was where he used to sketch while I read reports for work. He once told me the sea was the perfect metaphor for love, unpredictable, wild, and impossible to control. I never appreciated the metaphor until now. I tilted my head back, closing my eyes against the wind. I imagined him sitting beside me. I imagined the way he would lean into my shoulder without asking for permission because he never needed to. I imagined his laughter, his warmth, the softness in his eyes when he looked at me like I was something worth loving. "Why did you leave?" I whispered into the night. The question cracked in my throat. But I knew the answer. Because I made him feel like he would always come second. The next morning I arrived at the office early, hoping productivity would numb the ache in my chest. My assistant, Claire, raised a brow when I walked in. "You look like you did not sleep." Because I did not. She hesitated, tapping her pen against her notebook. "Garrett, maybe you should take a break. You have been running yourself ragged for months." I forced a smile. "I am fine." She did not believe me. No one did. I could tell by the way they glanced at me in meetings, unsure whether to cheer my success or comfort me. But comfort would require admitting something was wrong, and I had never been good at that. Later that day, something unexpected happened. During a partnership pitch, I froze again, but this time it was because one of the slides showcased a mural painted in a city we were planning to expand into. A mural signed by a familiar name. Milo Hart. My heartbeat stuttered. I stared at the image on the screen, a swirl of blues and golds, vibrant and alive, full of the emotion he used to breathe into everything he touched. The mural depicted two figures reaching for each other across a fractured skyline, their hands almost touching, separated by a crack that ran through the center like fate refusing to let them meet. It punched the breath out of me. The client noticed my hesitation. "Everything okay?" I straightened, cleared my throat, pretended to brush off the moment. "Yes, continue." But I barely heard the rest of the presentation. My pulse hammered. My mind swirled. Milo was out there, creating, thriving, leaving pieces of himself on walls and canvases around the world. And here I was, sitting in a room full of people clapping for me while I felt like I was unraveling from the inside. After the meeting, I excused myself and practically bolted to my office. I locked the door and stared at the mural image on my laptop. My hands shook as I zoomed in on the signature. It was definitely his. The curves of the letters. The way he added a small star above the I because he said everyone deserved a star attached to their name. Something inside me broke wide open. For months, I tried to bury the grief. Now I could no longer pretend it wasn't eating me alive. I opened a browser tab, typed his name, deleted it, typed it again. My fingers hovered over the search button. Fear wrapped itself around my throat. What if he was happier without me? What if he had found someone who gave him the simplicity, the softness, the presence I never did? What if he had forgotten me? My heart pounded as I pressed enter. A flood of images appeared. Galleries, art shows, interviews. Milo smiling in photographs, the same bright, unfiltered smile I used to wake up to. And then a headline caught my eye. Local artist Milo Hart debuts new collection exploring love, loss, and what remains. My breath hitched. I clicked before my hands could stop trembling. The article opened with a picture of him standing in front of a painting. His blonde hair was longer now, curling slightly at his ears. His eyes still held that familiar spark, the kind that saw the world in shades most people never noticed. But it was the name of the collection that struck me like a punch. What we leave behind. The words burned. I scrolled through the images of his work. Every painting dripped with emotion, raw, aching, beautiful. One canvas in particular made my heart twist. Two figures standing back to back, a single thread connecting them, fraying in the center. The caption beneath it read, "A love divided by ambition." My vision blurred. He painted us. He painted our ending. I pressed a shaking hand to my mouth as the truth settled deep in my bones. I did not just lose Milo. I wounded him. I haunted him as much as he haunted me. The realization hurt more than anything else. The guilt, the sorrow, the weight of choices that could not be undone. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair, covering my face with both hands. For the first time since he left, I allowed myself to break. Not quietly, not gracefully, but completely. Tears spilled down my cheeks, hot and relentless. I gasped for breath as the grief I had been outrunning finally caught me. Memories flooded in: Milo laughing as he burned dinner for the third time in 1 week. Milo sketching me while he thought I was asleep. Milo whispering "I love you" like a prayer against my collarbone. I sobbed until I was empty, until I was exhausted, until there was nothing left in me but a quiet ache. After a long while, the tears slowed. My breath steadied. A strange calm washed over me. Maybe this was the moment I had been avoiding. The moment where I stopped pretending I was fine and finally admitted the truth. I miss him. I still love him. I never stopped. I wiped my face and sat up, staring at the mural image again. The two figures reaching across a fractured skyline, their hands almost touching. Almost. The word echoed in my chest. If I stayed where I was, that would be the rest of my life, a series of almosts. Maybe it was too late to fix anything. Maybe he had moved on. Maybe seeing me again would hurt him more than heal him. But maybe, just maybe, he deserved to hear the words I never had the courage to say. And maybe I deserved the chance to say them. As the sun dipped behind the skyscrapers outside my window, I made a decision that felt like stepping onto a different path than the one I had been sprinting down for years. I grabbed my coat. I was going to find him. I left the office with a determination I had not felt in years. Not the hungry, competitive drive that fueled my ambition, but something quieter, steadier, painfully human. The desire to look the man I loved in the eyes and tell him the truth, not the polished version, not the diluted version, but the truth my heart had been carrying like a wound that refused to close. Finding Milo turned out to be harder than typing his name into a search bar. The article listed the gallery where his latest collection had debuted, but when I arrived, the curator informed me he had already moved on to a new residency across the city. They gave me an address, and I followed it like a lifeline. The residency was located in an old warehouse district where the buildings still carried the scars of their industrial past. Rusted metal doors, cracked windows, the scent of paint lingering in the cool air. Inside, voices echoed down the hallway as artists moved between their spaces, carrying canvases and supplies, their clothes splattered with colors that told stories of their own. My pulse quickened as I approached the door labeled Studio 14. His name was printed beneath it. Milo Hart. I lifted my hand to knock, but hesitated. My fingers hovered inches from the wood. For a moment, all my confidence dissolved, replaced by fear so sharp it made my breath falter. What if he did not want to see me? What if my presence reopened wounds he had finally healed? What if I was too late? Before I could talk myself out of it, the door opened from the inside. I stepped back, startled. And there he was. Milo. He stood barefoot on the paint-splattered floor, a brush still in his hand, his blonde hair pushed back messily, as if he had run his fingers through it 1,000 times. His shirt was stained with streaks of blue and gold. His green eyes widened the second he saw me. For a moment, time felt like it had stopped holding its breath right along with us. Garrett, he whispered, my name slipping from his lips with a mixture of shock and something I could not quite name. I swallowed hard. Hi. He blinked, as if struggling to make sense of the sight before him. Are you here for the residency? A commission? A meeting? The assumption pierced me. No, I am here for you. His breath hitched. The brush slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the floor. He did not reach for it. Garrett, he said again, softer this time. His voice carried a tremor that made my chest ache. I took a step closer. I had rehearsed 1,000 versions of this moment, but now that I was standing in front of him, every script in my head vanished. All that remained was honesty. I saw your work. The article, the mural, all of it, and I realized I could not keep pretending I was fine. His expression flickered with disbelief, then caution. Garrett, you cannot just show up after all this time, and I know. I cut in gently, and I am sorry, truly, deeply, for everything. He looked away, breathing unevenly. The afternoon light spilled through the windows, casting both of us in a warm, golden haze. I watched the way it softened his features, the way it highlighted the traces of the life he had built without me. You hurt me, Garrett. His voice cracked slightly. You made me feel small, like I was always standing in the shadow of the things you wanted. I nodded, my throat tightening. I know, and I hate myself for it. I chased a version of success that I thought would make me whole, but all it did was make me empty. He turned back, toward me slowly. His eyes shimmered, though he tried to hide it. Why now? Because I saw your art and realized I was still in it, that you were carrying pieces of me when I did not deserve to be remembered, and because I cannot keep living a life built on achievements that mean nothing without you. He exhaled shakily, as if the weight of my words pressed on something tender inside him. I stepped closer, cautiously. If you have moved on, if you are happy, if seeing me hurts you, I will walk away. I swear. But I needed to tell you that I never stopped loving you. Not for a second. And I am sorry for not being the man you deserved back then. I am trying to be that man now. Silence stretched between us. Heavy, fragile, the kind of silence that could shatter into hope or heartbreak. Finally, Milo sank onto a nearby stool, burying his face in his hands. I hesitated before taking a slow step toward him. When he did not pull away, I crouched down so we were eye level. He lifted his head. His eyes were red but clear. Garrett, I never wanted you to fail. I never wanted your dreams to shrink for me. I just wanted to feel like I was part of them. You were. I reached for his hand cautiously. You always were. I just did not know how to balance ambition and love without letting fear take over. Fear of what? Fear of needing someone so much that losing them could break me. His breath caught. And then you left and proved that losing you did break me. The honesty spilled out of me like a truth that had been caged for too long. Milo stared at me, his expression softening with something like heartbreak and tenderness woven together. I missed you, he whispered. The admission cracked something open in both of us. I squeezed his hand gently. Do you think there is a chance, a small one, a tiny one, that we can try again? At whatever pace you need, on whatever terms you choose. He studied me for a long moment. His eyes searched mine, not for perfection, but for sincerity. Garrett, people do not change overnight. I nodded. I know. And trust is not a switch you can flip back on. I know that too. But then his fingers curled slowly around mine. But I see something different in you. Something real. Something I have not seen before. My heart thudded. He stood, stepping closer until we were only inches apart. His voice dropped to a whisper. Let's try. Carefully. Slowly. But let's try. A breath I did not realize I had been holding escaped me. Relief washed over me so intensely it made me dizzy. I reached out, brushing a stray streak of blue paint from his cheek. He smiled softly at the touch, leaning in as if his body remembered me even when his heart struggled to. I missed this, I murmured. His eyes shone. Me too. For the first time in years, the world felt quiet, steady, like a place where beginnings were possible again. Behind him, a fresh canvas sat on the easel, blank, untouched, waiting. Milo followed my gaze and let out a soft laugh. New project, he said. I arched a brow. What is it going to be? He looked at me with a smile I had not seen since before everything fell apart. I think I finally know. He picked up a clean brush and placed it in my hand. Want to paint it with me? Emotion swelled in my chest so fiercely it almost hurt. I nodded. Yes, I want to. And as we stood there together, facing the blank canvas, I realized something profound. Maybe the past had fractured us. Maybe ambition had pulled us apart. But love, the kind that survives time, distance, and regret, had brought us back to a place where we could begin again. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. We stood side by side in front of the blank canvas, and for a moment neither of us moved. The studio felt impossibly quiet, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Milo handed me a palette, his fingers brushing mine lightly, sending a familiar warmth through my chest. I had forgotten how easily he could do that, stir something inside me that felt both fragile and powerful at the same time. He dipped his brush into a soft shade of gold. I watched the movement, the gentle pressure, the way his wrist curved with instinctive elegance. Art had always lived inside him like a second heartbeat. He touched the canvas delicately, forming the first stroke, a small crescent of color that glowed under the afternoon light. Your turn, he murmured without looking at me. I reached for a shade of blue, the same blue he'd accidentally smeared on my cheek minutes earlier, and touched my brush to the canvas just beside his stroke. My hand trembled, not from nerves but from the weight of what this moment represented. A beginning. He glanced at what I added and his lips lifted in a faint smile. You still go for cool colors. And you still go for warm, I replied, lifting a corner of my mouth. He nodded gently. Colors say a lot about people. I hesitated. What do ours say? His green eyes softened as he met my gaze. That we have always been opposites, learning to make something beautiful together. The comment hit something deep inside me, and I swallowed hard. Milo focused on the canvas again, adding another stroke, this time a bright streak of honey yellow. I followed with a deeper blue, the colors meeting but not blending, merging at the edges like two worlds learning how to touch again. We painted silently for a few minutes. Slow, careful strokes, small shapes, gradual movement. But beneath the silence there was a vibration, a hum of emotion neither of us dared name just yet. At one point, Milo stepped back, resting the wooden end of his brush against his lips as he studied our work so far. It is interesting, he murmured. What is? The way you paint now. I frowned slightly. What about it? He glanced at me, then back at the canvas. It is softer, less rigid. You used to paint like you were trying to control the canvas. Now it looks like you were listening to it. I let out a faint laugh. I guess I stopped trying to control everything. Milo tilted his head. That is new. Yeah, I exhaled slowly. It is. He seemed to absorb that, then quietly returned to painting. As we continued, our arms grazed occasionally, and each time it felt like a small spark of familiarity. At one point, he nudged my shoulder lightly. Careful, Garrett. You are inching into my territory. I bumped him back gently. Maybe I'm just trying to get close to you. He froze for half a second, not in discomfort, but surprise. A soft blush rose on his cheeks before he shook his head with a tiny laugh. You always did know how to catch me off guard. I smiled. I am trying to be honest. With you. With myself. Milo's brush stilled. He looked down, his expression turning more serious but not closed. Honesty is good, Garrett. It is a start. A start. The word echoed through me. That was enough. More than enough. We painted until the light changed, shifting from warm afternoon glow to amber dusk. The canvas began to take shape, a swirl of cool blues and warm golds, colliding and drifting apart, echoing the tension and tenderness of what we were rebuilding. When Milo finally stepped back, he exhaled softly. It is not finished, but it is something. I stood beside him, studying the canvas, and it felt like us. A beginning, imperfect but full of possibility. I like it, I said. He nudged me gently. Do not sound too shocked. I laughed under my breath. I like it because we painted it together. His eyes flickered at that, something soft moving behind them. We cleaned the brushes in comfortable silence. The kind of silence that felt earned, not forced. Outside, the sky deepened into twilight, the colors almost mirroring the paint on our canvas. Before I left, Milo stood by the studio door, leaning lightly against the frame with his arms crossed. "So what now?" he asked softly. The question was simple, but the meaning behind it was enormous. I stepped toward him, my voice steady. "Now I show up. Consistently. Patiently. I rebuild trust instead of just asking for it. And I take things at your pace." He searched my face, studying every detail as if trying to measure the truth in me. Maybe he was. Maybe he had every right to. Finally, he nodded. "Slow is good." "Slow is perfect," I replied. He let out a small breath, almost a laugh. "You know, part of me still cannot believe you walked into my studio today." "Trust me," I said quietly. "I cannot believe it either, but I am glad I did." His voice softened. "So am I." For a moment, we simply stood there in the doorway, the faint hum of street noise drifting in from outside. Milo's hand slipped from his crossed arms and hovered beside mine, close but not touching. Without thinking, I turned my palm upward. He hesitated for the briefest second, then placed his hand in mine. Gentle, uncertain, familiar. My heart squeezed at the contact. It felt like coming home to something I thought I had lost forever. "Do not rush this," he reminded me. I shook my head. "I will not." We stood there until the cool evening breeze made him shiver slightly. He pulled his hand back, but not abruptly, just enough to tuck his arms around himself again. "I should let you rest," I said, "and let you get back to your art." He smiled softly. "And you should get back to your empire." I winced playfully. "I am trying to downsize it." "Good." He nudged me with his shoulder. "Leave room for other things." I walked out of the studio, pausing in the hallway as Milo closed the door gently behind me. I could still feel the warmth of his hand, the softness in his voice, the cautious hope in his eyes. Hope. That was something I had not felt in years. As I stepped into the night, I glanced at my phone. Dozens of missed emails. A few urgent notifications. A reminder of the world I had built around ambition. But for the first time, none of it pressed down on my chest. Because something mattered more now. Someone. Over the next few weeks, everything changed slowly, quietly, profoundly. Milo and I began meeting regularly at his studio. Sometimes we painted. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we simply existed in the same space, breathing the same air, letting the tension between past and present settle into something softer. Trust did not return quickly. It came in cautious steps, small gestures, honest conversations. But every moment felt real in a way my life had not felt real in years. One evening, after a long day at work, I visited Milo with 2 coffees in hand. He looked at the cups, then at me with a mock suspicious stare. "Lavender latte?" I grinned. I remembered. He took the cup, shaking his head with a smile tugging at his lips. "Garrett, you are making it very hard to take things slow." "Good," I teased softly, "because I am not planning on letting you slip away again." His cheeks warmed, but he didn't look away. "Maybe I do not want to slip away this time." The words were quiet, but they thundered in my heart. I stepped closer. "Milo," but he pressed a paint-splattered fingertip lightly against my lips. "Slow," he whispered, though his eyes sparkled with something that told me he wasn't pushing me away at all. I kissed the tip of his finger. "Slow," I echoed. And for the first time since losing him, I felt the future tugging not like a demand but an invitation. A canvas waiting to be painted. A story waiting to be rewritten. Us.